space, final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilization, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Greetings, salutations, and welcome to Retrek. I'm Captain Jim. With me, of course, is Admiral Elliot.
Hi there.
And Dr. Squee.
Heading frequencies open, Captain.
And obviously, I'm sure everyone listening is aware of the news this week, but we're starting with very sad Trek news, which is the passing of Nichelle Nichols. And so we're not doing what we were going to do, which was looking at Way of the Warrior. So that's cursed now.
No,
it's almost like no
something out
one
there.
wants to ever cover that episode.
We will eventually, but we thought we'd take a bit of a look at a couple of Uhura episodes, as well as just generally talk about Nichelle Nichols, Uhura, her legacy, and everything like that.
I'm telling you, every time I go to put on Way of the Warrior, the great bird of the galaxy swoops down and nicks the remote control out of my hand.
That's it. It's just not going to happen.
I think we're lined up for 163rd episode special of Way of the
There you
Warrior.
go. That's
Which,
even
as
better.
everyone knows, the 163rd episode is a major milestone.
Especially in the Klingon Empire, I believe. It's a big number for the Klingons.
Absolutely. We're just waiting for the stars to align perfectly for that one. But fingers crossed next week we will cover that one. But we wanted to talk about
Alice was
Nichelle.
163 years old.
There you go. Yeah,
That's
so
why it's such a momentous number.
And you don't look a day over 160.
So yeah, we wanted to talk about Nichelle Nichols a little bit this week, and obviously you can't move for tributes to her, so we don't presume to be able to say anything any better than anyone else did or to add anything to the story.
I think
But-
all you could do is mirror what people are doing, which is quite a good opening for a great
It is.
Nichelle Nichols episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to look at Mirror Mirror, which we picked out. So we were trying to think of standout horror episodes. And as we talked about when we were looking at Strange New Worlds, really, the original series didn't really do character episodes unless it was Kirk or Spock and McCoy, like once.
Maybe a Scotty if you're lucky.
Yeah, a little bit. So that one where he turned into Jack the Ripper.
And the one where he had a love interest, and they said, "Oh, at his advanced years, he was like 30."
Yeah.
I think that was the Jack the Ripper once he murdered her, didn't he? And they were like, "Well,
Oh yeah. So
it was Jack the Ripper did it." That was
there is just that one episode.
yeah, just that one. But there's no dedicated horror episode. But I mean, she's memorable in so many of them, and the character itself. So, but we did
and I'll say
Mirror Mirror because she gets to be badass in this one. So,
and I want to throw it out there. I think I was the one who first suggested Mirror Mirror, and in my head, I was thinking, "Oh yeah, she's all over that episode." And I think it's such a credit to her acting and her performance and how striking she is in that scene where she challenges Sulu, like the Mirror Sulu. That I picture just being all over the episode. When I'm watching it, it's basically that scene and a couple other bits she pops up. There's even a bit where they go, it's like, right, tell them to meet me downstairs. Uhura looks as if she's going towards, like, joining them. Kirk just gives a good, like, no, you stay on the bridge. Come on. You want to be staying up here. Let the men talk. And it's just like, but she was that good.
That was something I did notice because we were watching this particularly with an eye on Uhura. She does get, in many ways, the most dangerous job in this episode because she's the one who's got to mingle with the mirror
the rest of the crew constantly,
whereas the rest of them get to hide basically. And there is that brilliant scene where Uhura is about to say that she's scared, and Kirk kind of reassures her, and it almost crosses that line that we were talking about last week with the hugging Yeoman Rand. It leans a little bit into, she's been a bit hysterical, pull it together. But I don't think it quite does cross that line. I think it comes across as believable given how extreme the situation is. And she doesn't at any point say, I can't do it, I'm not up to it. She goes and she does it. And like I said, she does have the most dangerous role, and it's never questioned that she's capable of it. which in its own way is, or was at the time, quite progressive. So,
I mean, the story you two will both know, and it's been mentioned everywhere this week, but for the one person who hasn't heard it, it was actually Martin Luther King at a party who persuaded Nichelle Nichols to stay on. I think it was for the third series. Am I correct?
Second
or was it
series.
second? It was second.
The second season.
So it's for the second season, because she felt like after doing the first season, it's a great part, but they weren't really writing to her enough. And it was him who persuaded her to say, saying it's so important, such an important thing to see people of all colors, creeds, sexes, anything on the bridge there. We're all represented, and that's so important. And it kind of speaks to both their points this episode, because it speaks to how she should have had so much more to do in this episode. However, how powerful was her performance? And not just because she's black, not because she's a woman or everything, just because she's a bloody great actress.
A bloody good actress.
She is such a good actor that it feels like she has twice the screen time she does. If I wasn't watching this looking for her moment, afterwards, again, I swear I would have said, so yeah, she's all over that, so she's got lots to do. She does that thing on the bridge with Sulu, and then there's the other bit on the bridge with Sulu, and then she's on that transporter at that point, and and she was on the planet at the beginning, and just you realize how little there is of her in it.
Yeah,
but she's such a big presence. She's amazing.
I think it's the fact that nothing's ever made of the fact when she steps up and does something out of the ordinary. She is just treated as another member of the crew, and
she's not getting sort of like, wow, that was amazing that you were able to do that as a black woman. It's sort of like, no, she's a Starfleet officer. She's doing a job, and she's and that's all there is to it.
Like, saying this from a 2022 perspective, people might be listening thinking, well, of course she's treated like that. Why would she be treated any different? And I think it speaks to how well done it was, that it does feel normal to our eyes.
Did they still have the separation in parts of some of the American
segregation
at this time?
I don't know, to be honest.
More 50s.
It only ended in the 60s, but I'm not sure if it...
I think it probably had ended, but there was certainly,
if it had ended, it had only just ended.
Yes.
There was still a lot of very blatant racism in America.
Oh, yeah. Social change was very much in its infancy, and arguably it still is now, but certainly more so then.
I mean, it's a light touch. Sorry, mate. You go.
I was going to say, I think it's just the fact that this was presented as normal, and that did a lot more than we probably appreciate now. Like, Whoopi Goldberg's a good example. Like, she credits the fact that Nichelle Nichols was in this to her becoming an actress. And
it's always almost been put out as a meme. It's all over Facebook, and it was Whoopi Goldberg at 9-year-old sat in front of the TV, and she went running into the kitchen to grab her mum and grandmother to come see what was on TV. That there was a black woman on TV that wasn't playing the part of a maid.
Exactly. That's it. And
I was just going to throw out there that something you guys mentioned, I think it might have been you, Elliot, last week or recently, certainly. There's that scene where she ends up taking the helm. And it was Roddenberry's ability to so lightly touch a moment. So it was there, and anyone who cared to see it could. But anyone who was a racist dick basically might, it would get past them. He would have this very light way of doing it so that the action would follow Kirk onto where he's going onto the planet and not her on the bridge so much. But you saw a black woman in the 60s at the helm of the starship. Well, anyone who cared to see that was such a powerful image, I'm sure.
Well, what was powerful about it was the fact that Kirk just turned around and went, Uhura, take the helm. And she just took the helm and got on with the job. That was the big thing about. There was no big deal made about it in the script, but the big deal was that it was a black woman being put in this position.
Yeah,
and there was nothing said about it, and not just the fact she was black, even putting a woman in that position at the time. but
I bet
make it a black woman was like.
I would add, though, to that probably Roddenberry's dream would be like, to have a scene with her on the bridge, to have a scene with her, doing some helmsman, doing something as the person who's taken the captain's chair. but he knew that's what I can get away with. That's like, that will still be a huge, powerful message at this point, but that's as much as I can do. Because he knew if he tried for anything more, then it would just get cut straight away.
Yeah,
and that's it. It's baby steps, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
he was fighting the studios what he could get away with.
Yeah,
it was 1964, the Civil Rights Act in America.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
well, not long.
The development time of Star Trek when Roddenberry straight away. Oh, black woman.
There's two things I did want to point out. One was when the news hit, because it happened the day before. But when the news of Nichelle Nichols' death, certainly that I saw, start coming on the internet, it was actually during the Women's World Cup final, which England won after many years of hurt. And it just so much struck me that someone who was so important to women and to black women especially, and to the black community, in a moment of huge progress for the female game, of it being shown on primetime TV, it was the biggest selling Euros ever, men or female, male or female.
4 million live viewers on BBC.
And I don't think it's a stretch.
Nearly 6 million watching on BBC iPlayer. I had it on BBC iPlayer.
And I don't think it's a stretch to say that Nichelle Nichols specifically, and people like her who were trailblazers at their time for women, that's how you get here. And to have that symmetry, it really just hit me like a ton of bricks that happened at that moment. That kind of, because again, she didn't die that moment. She died the night before, but it came on the internet as that was happening. And that's just huge. In some way.
It was a weird sort of, like you say, a synchronicity to it. And it just talking about what we've been talking about in terms of like the looking at an episode like Mirror Mirror or the Lorelei Signal, which we're going to talk about, or even last week's Balance of Terror, where Uhura does take the con. And looking at that from a 2022 perspective, we say, oh, well, of course that should be normal. That doesn't seem like anything particularly progressive. That's just the way things were. But the fact that it was, I like to think that, in 50 years' time, people will be watching Discovery, Picard, Strange New Worlds, and like, for example, the pirate episode, and they'll be saying, oh, look, that was one of the first times we had a non-binary character. And there wasn't a big thing made of it, and why was that even commented on at the time? And that's the beauty of what Star Trek does and did and continues to do.
That's why I think I still to this day prefer stuff like that done in that light touch way. It's it's right there. It's right there for everyone to see, but it's not signposted, which they did more in Discovery. Mm-hmm. I didn't enjoy the way Discovery handles things. They hit you over the head with the things in a way that like PC's often accused of. They actually do, I think, a lot more than a lot of shows which get accused of it.
Yeah, there's ways of doing it.
Yeah,
which Strange New Worlds, an original series, were really clever at and really good at.
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm shockingly awful with names, as you both know. The non-binary character on Discovery,
Captain Angel.
No, on Discovery. So the
Adira.
Adira. It was when she came on. There was this huge thing about her, kind of like, actually, I'm going by they, and it was like made such a big fuss of it. I thought it would have been so much more of a powerful symbol if they'd gone. She goes, oh, actually, they said, oh, actually, I go by they. Okay, cool. Move on with the scene. That, I think, is such a big moment. Or even they came on and just started calling her they.
If you watch it back, that is more or less what happened.
They did. Well, the thing which I'm picking up on, which just wasn't to my taste, I guess, it was the fact that in the 29th century, I think it is they're in.
30th century.
She still said it as if it's a huge deal that she's coming out as non-binary, whereas even by today's standards, it's more accepted, I feel like, than they made it on, in general. No, actually, no. Sorry, that's disingenuous. There are still people who are having those moments today, but in the future, I like to think they won't.
Yeah,
much like Roddenberry showed Nichelle Nichols taking the helm. It was just a thing that happened. It wasn't signposted.
Yeah, I can see both sides on that argument because I can see, yes, by the 30th century, it wouldn't be a big deal. But I can also see that, but this is a TV program for now, and because people do have such a problem with it, we kind of do need to address it. So
how you say that? But did they with Nichelle? They didn't. They just.
No,
they even made a thing of it. In I love this episode because it's such a weird little moment. But there's a moment where Abraham Lincoln's on the bridge, and he uses a term which I'm not sure if it's okay to use. It's not the N word.
I wouldn't use it on.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
He uses this term which. No, just being specific about here. It's not the N word, but it's like it's a word.
Yeah, it's a female form of that.
Yeah, which probably is not okay. But again, it's just a term which is never used now, so I don't know. But I will avoid it, of course. But I'm just saying that he says this word and he goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and she goes, "No, I don't care." Like, it's made.
Yeah.
Again, they make a fool of the conceit. We're so far past it, and we're not there yet. I do understand. I'm not trying to claim that if anyone's watching and thinking that, but at that stage, they're so far past it. It's just not even a thing, and that's how important her character was.
Yeah,
to show that.
Well, should we?
Can I just give one more moment of
shout out? Of course.
Only because this shows you how good Nichelle Nichols was. Star Trek V. All over, like there's bad writing, but she gets a scene where she's got to do a fan dance in the desert and then deliver the line. Well, I like to perform to a captive audience. Worst pile of dog shit writing you're ever going to see. And she sells it. I still enjoy that moment because she's so damn bloody charming. Like, it's easy to deliver good dialogue, which she got given several times. Not enough of it, but she did get given some good dialogue in episodes. And she, of course, elevated those. But she delivered bad dialogue to the point where I enjoy that scene, and I shouldn't because it's shit. It's
Are you trying to say that William Shatner isn't a great writer?
No, only that scene. The rest of it was great.
Yeah, the rest of it was brilliant. Like
again, the rock monsters, obviously.
Well,
again, Nichelle Nichols.
$3 million, and that movie can be fixed. I don't know why the studio won't do it.
Who knows?
It'd be cheaper than what they did for the remastered motion picture.
Well, that's it. Maybe now Paramount Plus is a thing. We might get the Shatner cut, but I hope not. Star Trek V though. Who could forget the Scotty and Uhura love story that came out of nowhere?
Yeah. But I kind of enjoyed it as well because they're both so fucking charming.
Yeah, they both act it as well as can be, but it's pretty awful, isn't it? Where it's just like, "Oh, Scotty, take a weight off your feet," and he's like, "Oh no, lassie, I've got some work to do." And oh my god!
Yeah, it's a funny one where that came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in as well, just because we're now naming bad scenes from Star Trek V. It's like, I know the ship like the back of my hand. Bong! Like, that's not a cheesy, overdone trope at all.
But that was good. They put that bit in the trailer. And, it needed to go in the trailer because that's probably the best bit in the film. So, put that on.
Also, if Shatner does ever get to do his ultimate cut, it does have to be called Star Trek V, Shatner's Revenge Cut.
One of these days, I'm going to build a rock monster in a little diorama just to show how good it'd be.
How good, yeah. Well, one last thing to say about Star Trek V then, sorry, and this is not related to Nichelle Nichols, but it's worth repeating. If you look for the original teaser poster for Star Trek V, it was a starfield and a cinema chair with a seatbelt on it. And it said, why are they putting seatbelts in cinemas in 1990 or whatever year it was? And then it said, Star Trek V. And it was meant to be, it's so exciting that you'll need a seatbelt to hold you down. But it came across as, so you won't leave.
I thought it was just... For a second there, I thought it was a joke on like the fact they don't have seatbelts in the Enterprise.
No, it was meant to be that it'll be so exciting that you'll need to be held down on your seat. But actually, it's that bad. We're going to have to lock you in to make you watch it.
We're going to restrain you.
So that was one of them where, with hindsight, they should have probably rethought that advertising campaign.
Well, there was an old Hitchcock thing. We'll sell you the seat, but you'll only use the edge of it. Or was that Tarantino?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah,
Tarantino.
that sounds like a Hitchcock.
It's one or the other, but yeah, it's like, we'll sell you the seat, but you'll only use the edge of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, whereas like with Star Trek 5, it's like, we'll sell you the seat and you're not fucking leaving it, all right?
Yeah, we'll sell you the seat for $3 million so I can make my rock monsters.
What I can't understand is, like we know he's got quite a large personal fortune. He could do the Shatner cut himself.
Of course he could. It's almost like he knows it won't make a lot of money if he could do it. But anyway, so yeah, well...
I'm sorry. We are Star Trek fans. If a Shatner cut comes out with the rock monsters, we are all going to go watch it, the fuck out of it, and buy the fuck out of it. Because we're geeks, and that's what we do.
Oh yeah, I will watch it. I mean, I'm gonna pre-order my motion picture 4K edition. You know, even though that's a very flawed film. But
oh yeah, I mean, it's not like when I'm watching all the Star Trek films, I go, no, let's miss out the crap 5 one. No, I'm still putting it in.
I still watch it.
And also,
you gotta watch 5.
Also, to throw in, just because he passed away last week, David Warner, great performance in that and Star Trek 6 as well.
Yeah.
Toby Haydock, actor, comedian, he came on the Dr. Scree show and we talked about by David Warner and Bernard Cribbins. When we were talking about David Warner, he said the best thing about him in Star Trek 5. And that's that he just, it's like we were saying, not maybe the best film, but he plays that weary person who's just had enough. He's just wearing his jacket and sunglasses, drinking on this planet. He can't be asked anymore. And he conveys that so well. It's a gem of a performance in a really shitty film. Yeah. Again, the performances are so good.
Yeah.
And
also,
he is wonderful in it.
Who is it? The guy who plays John, the first one that we see, what's he called? Sunak? Is it? Cyborg.
I was going to say Sunak, Richie.
Turns is also, what's he in?
It's the guy from The Hills Have Eyes, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the guy from, what's the awful first season episode where they have, it's the guy from the Wild West one, TOS.
Oh, Spectre of a Gun.
Spectre of a Gun. It's one of the it's a cowboy baddie.
Right. Okay. Just on David Warner as well. I remember when we met him at the Sci-Fi Weekender, and we were asking him about his Star Trek roles and whatnot, and he said Star Trek 5 was his favorite because all the other ones he had full head prosthetics, whereas
he loved it.
Star Trek 5 he got to just stand there with a fag in one hand and a drink in the other and give his performance.
Last week on the DS show, I put in that interview because he just passed away. Literally, like it was within 24 hours of the show. I think I just plugged it in there. And so this week we did a deep dive and I did recount the story of when we met him and how he was just like, he's saying Star Trek 5 was favorite one because he didn't have to put on makeup, and it's like he tells Shatner every time he sees him.
Which I'm sure that
what was it, Chain of Command, he was so late to call up he never had a chance to learn the lines, so his lines were
3 days before.
Studio.
3 days before he does that fucking performance, he is that good.
Yeah, I mean that was
crazy. Up all over for
I'm picturing months of researching prisoners of war and torturing situations and first-person accounts and everything. Because 3 days before, I had lines plugged up everywhere.
I could never know. Had no problem.
And you watch that series and show me one scene where you can see an eye line of him not looking intently at Patrick Stewart and what he's about.
Yeah. I mean, that was the thing that really came across when we spoke to David Warner, is that he was so humble in terms of his own assessment of his acting ability. Like, we were saying, the Chain of Command, and he says, well, I just had a really good script and I just read the lines. And it's like, yeah, but the way you read the lines made it something exceptional. It's a good script, but
it's nice that he's humble, that he recognises the writers.
Yeah.
He could only be good if he's got the people who do the other bits.
He just had this unerring talent of being able to tap into the truth of a scene. So it's like, it wasn't, he didn't need, like the research which I'm talking about, that's how I picture actors doing it, is researching all this stuff. But he could just dial into like, well, this is what's happening in this scene. I don't know all this other stuff. Like, okay, other people might have reacted X, Y, and Z in this situation, but this character, what's he doing? What am I doing in this moment? And he just dialed into the truth of it. And to be able to do that without researching loads of first-hand accounts and all that is such a talent. It's so
that's the thing, isn't it? That's the difference between a good actor and a really good actor. You know, someone who can conjure this life story of this man in so few words and with such nuances to the performance. I think I'm going to make a bit of a judgment call on the fly here while we're still in production, that I think we should come back to Mirror Mirror and cover it maybe as part of a Mirror Universe miniseries, because that episode and the Mirror Universe concepts and everything like that deserve our time. But I think
we've lost two massive well, we've lost more than two, but we've lost it. From the Star Trek universe, we've lost David Warner, we've lost Nichelle.
So, I think we could talk about those two.
We've lost the third one as well this week.
Well, I mean, Bernard Cribbins passed away, but he wasn't Star Trek.
No, there's somebody else from Star Trek.
There has been a few. There's been it's almost like, what was that year where all the celebrities kept dying?
Yeah, but we're getting it in 1 month.
And that's compressed. We have it all in a week.
2016, I think. But yeah, there was that year where just everyone.
Yeah, it was crazy.
But so, can I just give a quick pitch? And I wonder if you guys want to do the same pitch for Bernard Cribbins if he was in Star Trek. I'm going to say a mate of Scotty's from another ship, and they could they would be so delightful playing off each other. So you've got Scotty in Englishy.
So I could have seen Bernard Cribbins being like Boothby or something. Because we had all these stories about Boothby, like, oh, he's the gardener at the thing. And if they'd have turned up and it had been Bernard Cribbins, that wouldn't have surprised me at all.
I like that. And he could be the equivalent in one of the other shows. Like, he was favorite lecturer there or something. Or yeah, I love that.
Or
just a guy actually Data's dad. So
Dr. Sun, that would have been interesting.
Oh, yeah, he'd be great for that. See, he could play anything. Man's legend.
So, should we just broaden it out then and just talk about Nichelle Nichols and Uhura in general then?
Yeah.
Obviously, we've talked about that great moment with Sulu, and it's worth calling out George Takei's performance as well while we're doing that, because he's clearly
really nice story I heard that he put out from George Takei, put out on his Facebook this week, sort of remembering Nichelle. And he invited her to be the maid of honor at his wedding.
Yeah.
For him and Brad. And she sort of looked at the guest list and, like, there's Walter Koenig as best man, and she's maid of honor, and she goes, why is he best man and I'm just maid of honor? I want to be best lady. Or best woman. And he went, no, you can't be best woman, but you can be best lady. So she's best lady.
Good for her. That sounds like that'd have been an awesome wedding, because everyone was there except Shatner. So it's, it's already got a few.
I hope he turns up to a funeral and doesn't. Like, why he wanted Leonard Nimoy was disgusting.
I think the family probably didn't want him there because despite what Shatner said in his book, I don't think Nimoy and Shatner had made it up before Nimoy died.
It was so weird because they had not long before Leonard Nimoy died. He appeared on the roast. He appeared on the roast of William Shatner. Now, obviously, I think partly they did that for the enjoyment of taking the piss out of him, but it was actually Leonard Nimoy was playing like the opposite. Actually, he was at the beginning. He was calling him, going, "It's like, Bill, why would you want to do this? They're just going to humiliate you and everything." He was actually playing a kind of quite nice character, whereas George Takei got to go on and completely take the piss out, because he at the beginning of the roast, Shatner rides on this horse, gets off, like they do the thing, and then when George Takei gives this whole speech, does a whole Takei like toupee, does all these kind of like jokes, and then at the end he goes, "And I finally get to say what I've always wanted to say to you, Bill. fuck you and the horse you rode in on. But yeah. So he did certainly publicly. I think even if they didn't make it up, I think Leonard Nimoy didn't want it on his conscience, maybe, or whatever way you want to put it.
For the fans' basis,
I think he wanted to be classic. Yeah, I mean, for the fans and maybe also for himself, because he never seemed like a guy who lived in any bitterness or anything. In fact, the older he got, the more he, someone was talking about it earlier, actually, on a podcast I was listening to, funny enough, the fact that he wrote the book, I Am Not Spock, and then later on, in a moment of much self-awareness, he grew to write a book called I Am Spock, which is all about him accepting that side of him and accepting the fandom, accepting, yes, this is the role I'm going to be the most known for, and it's bloody brilliant. And I think that's how he.
If he never gets another filming job in his life, it'd pay for it. It pays for them. They're made for life of the convention circuit.
Yeah, so it's arguable how much they made it up, but certainly Leonard Nimoy wanted to be the classier guy there, and obviously Shatner not so much.
And I'm not gonna use this as an opportunity to slag Shatner off or whatever, but all I will say is, don't be too surprised if he writes a book about his wonderful friendship with Nichelle Nichols over the years. That would not surprise me if something like that appeared. And I hope they did have a great friendship over the years, but remains to be seen. Anyway, so
I've never heard anything bad between.
No, neither have I.
Well,
but other sort of Uhura moments that I think were brilliant. Like, obviously,
but we were going to look at what is it? L'Oreal's Snare.
Lorelei Signal.
Lorelai's Signal, sorry.
Yeah, which is
the reason we have to look at that was it's where the women take over the Enterprise, or they take command, because the men are all. It's basically part of the Greek Odyssey.
Yes.
Oh my god! And I know that they made I'm sure most of Star Trek high as a kite, but fucking hell, some of the episodes of the animated series, that one in particular, I'm like, how high were they when they wrote that one? That was batshit and a half. I loved it, but it was just some of the writing.
Shit though, because it's literally the story of the sirens.
Oh no, but it's in the writing. I'm not saying the story. I'm saying it's in the writing and the way it's delivered. It is nutty. I don't care who you are.
I did notice a few interesting things that cropped up in it, considering we've just had the first season of Strange New Worlds. When Spock sort of reaches out psychically, he does so to Chapel, which I thought was really interesting when you look at it now, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. They were really close.
And he says Christine. He does.
Yeah, so I thought that's really
it makes you wonder. It almost makes you wonder, have the guys who've created Strange New Worlds actually watched all the Star Trek and picked up on these things?
It wouldn't surprise me, but it would surprise me.
I was actually saying that tongue in cheek, because you get all the fandom menace who go, they've never watched the original Trek. And it's almost, perhaps they have watched it.
I'm certain they've watched it, but I'd be very surprised if there's a note in the writer's room saying, remember the Lorelei Signal.
If they did, though, props.
Well, it's to be fair, it's another of those episodes, because the women took control of took command.
Yeah, definitely.
And Uhura immediately goes, I am taking command. I take responsibility. She puts it in the log. And immediately she knows what to do. She said, I want a security team, all women in the transporter room. I want...
Yeah, and it's great, and it shows the capability. And
this
again,
this is still only the early 70s with the animated series.
Yeah.
So it's still massively progressive doing this.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. It's not like they say, "Oh, we need to get together an all-women landing crew." Oh, well, I'm going to have to pull people out of cooking, and I'm going to have to get some of the cleaners here because we haven't got enough crew. It's like, no, we've got.
But who's going to sew the uniforms?
Yeah, we've got a perfectly capable all-women landing crew, and this is not a problem. The only thing I thought that detracted from it a little bit.
All right, Willow has a note in a second, though. I'm just okay. Sorry, after you. Yeah.
The only bit I thought detracted from it was that Spock still has to kind of give them the solution to it, like when he's on his deathbed, but he's getting very old bed. He says, "Oh, you need to do this, this, and this," and it's like that does detract from it a little bit. Like it'd have been better if Uhura had gone, right, this is what we're doing. Here we go.
They did that in the motion picture. It's like when it came to understanding what Voyager's signal was.
Yeah,
Spock who worked out, and who's the communications officer? Give her that part where she works out what it is.
And I think we're seeing with the Kelvin universe and with Strange New Worlds what Uhura would have got to do if, like you say, Squee, if Roddenberry had been able to get a bit more through back in the day.
By the way, Willow's just walked off in a half. 3 men in this podcast. 1 female dog tries to get in, and she has to wait. I'm just saying. But
we haven't got that progressive yet, I'm afraid.
No.
And one thing
talking for us.
One thing which ironically mirrors, see what I did there, between Mira and Lorelei, is that in both of them, actually, one thing I really noticed was Uhura's in the same position as the men, certainly in Mira, of being in this alternate universe, and she has every opportunity or chance of hamming it up. And you hear Shatner's voice in it, and he's going, "See, yeah, I'm a bad Shatner. I'm going to take over this joint. I'll pay you off, Spock, if you want to join me." And it's just, he is playing it so hammy. And also in this other episode where they're meant to be on this mesmeric kind of thing of the siren women, and he's very, it's like, "Oh my God, but we must go towards them. I feel compelled." And you've got just Uhura and Nichelle showing them how it's done. Like she just plays it so that she's just a badass woman in both of these.
So,
and in Mira, I have to say, when she's doing, can I just with Mira, just with Mira when she's doing that scene, and she just, there's no funny voice, there's no anything else. She plays like coy in 1 second, then she's got a knife to him in the next, and just everyone being at the palm of the hand, and he's just camping it up again. Sorry, you were saying it.
Yeah. Go on, Elliot.
No, I was just saying William Shatner has got his own very unique acting style.
Oh, yes. So other things about Nichelle Nichols then, like her first episode was the Corbomite maneuver. And in that episode, to be fair, all she says is "hailing frequencies open, Captain."
But this is also,
and who remembers her from that line?
Because they've put a black woman in a non-typical job and a job of authority.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm not decrying it at all. But,
but it goes back to that thing. It's sort of like what they could get away with bit by bit.
But going back to that conversation she had with Martin Luther King, one of the things she said to him apparently was, "All I ever say is hailing frequencies open." And yeah, when you watch the Corbomite maneuver, you're like, that's obviously the one that was stuck in her head when she was feeling a little bit underused.
Even then, she's opening up a dialogue, though.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a shame that we didn't get more of Uhura working out the language puzzles and stuff like that.
I mean, true, she then didn't get to take part in the dialogue, but apart from that, one which we do have to, of course, touch upon in any look back at Uhura's legacy is the first ever interracial kiss on TV, which before anyone says it, I know it's disputed that there might have been some other examples and some other things which were in an advert or something like that. I don't know. Fine. Arguably one of the first interracial kiss on TV, certainly one that's remembered. Banned for years in the UK as well as in the States. You know, you like to think that we would be better than that, but no, we weren't at all. You know, I remember you memorized every single episode of Star Trek. You watched them off by heart. They got played every Friday on Death 2 or just after Death 2 on the BBC Two lineup.
BBC2, it was 6 o'clock on Wednesday.
Yeah, and
because when I was a kid, like I'm about 10 years older than you.
Yeah, I'm saying it played on a Friday as well, though.
But when I was a kid, sort of 6 or 7, 8, 9, and BBC and Star Trek was on constant repeat. Wednesday night was the only night after kids' TV finished at 6 o'clock that my dad didn't watch the news. That was switched over to BBC Two, and we could watch Star Trek together.
Which is all good and well, but I remember on Fridays, and I'm sure I did watch it on Wednesday as well. But specific to Friday, because the reason why I remember specifically on Friday was because that's when the school disco was on, and I'd have my tea while watching that, and then I'd go to the school disco. It was a very exciting day in the Squee household that day. And anyway, that's another story. But I just remember that after they'd replayed it so many times and you memorized every episode, then suddenly one day they were showing this episode, and there was great comments about how it had been lost for years. It got into the newspapers and everything.
Yeah.
And then you saw this episode, this big crazy episode where there's this kiss. And then the story, of course, came out that during the filming of it as well, Shatner had pulled a face because they wanted to have some safety cuts where they could cut out the kiss. So he pulled faces to the camera and everything.
Every time so that they couldn't cut the kiss.
So they had to use the kiss. But it's just such an important moment, and I'm so glad someone who did so much else for the cause, if you will, got to have that moment on a Star Trek episode. And,
absolutely,
it's amazing. You know, that Star Trek can be remembered for so many things, as can Uhura, but that moment is a first that no one can deny, apart from those people who claim there was other things. But like that will always be remembered as the case.
It will, and yeah, there is.
There might have been an earlier interracial kiss on television, but that's the one that's remembered, and that's the thing.
It's certainly the biggest show to do it at the time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is if there were, which go look it up. There's debates and whatnot, but the fact is that this one is the one that was remembered. So this one had the cultural impact that it needed to. So, that in and of itself is something, regardless of whether it was technically the first one or not.
And also, even at the time, I think it played that is mention to the fact they're being forced to do this against their will. All parties are. And it's mentioned then, but it just seems even more prescient now when we are questioning so many views of the past and the way people were forced to do certain things, a lot of them being female, and a good subset of that female portion being black as well. And the debates which are happening now, I think when you watch that episode, it's hard for that not to bleed into it as well.
Yeah, and I can see that argument, but the fact that the impact of it from a positive perspective has been so great. It's taken us 40, 50 years to have these other debates, and there is absolutely room for these debates, and we can talk about that, but the impact it had is still undeniable. So,
oh God, I'm not even saying that in a bad way. I'm saying it's good that we're having this conversation and it triggers conversations. That's what Star Trek always did. I even wonder if there was a side of it that Roddenberry saw, because he did seem very prescient with a lot of things. I'm wondering if he thought it's like one day they'll realize that this is in there too. Once they get past the interracial kiss thing, there'll be conversations about consent. I think he saw those progressive issues so many years before they were even arisen.
I think part of it again might have been a concession to the censors to go, well, we've got an escape hatch. If they say we're not happy with this, you can say, but he's been mind controlled. So
it's not consensual.
It's not a consensual interracial kiss. So, if you want to think that he doesn't want to do it, that's fine.
So I think you're right, and I think Roddenberry even said that in interviews, but it's so funny. It's like the fact that it was non-consensual made it better for them. It's like, talk about being on the wrong side of history is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's non-consensual. That's fine then. Go at it.
It's that thing, though, they had to jump through hoops.
Yes.
It's like Spock was looked at as being a devilish character. Like the studio on the early posters for Star Trek's release, airbrushed out Spock's pointed ears and stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? One of the other things about the kiss, like I remember seeing a documentary where one of the producers was talking, and they said, we expected mountains and mountains of hate mail to come in about it, and what happened instead was we got a huge amount of positive mail.
Yeah.
And then we did get a complaint letter, and it basically said, I'm a good old Texas boy or whatever, and I'm totally against this. I think it's disgusting you've shown it on telly. But if I'd have been stood there as Captain Kirk with Uhura in my arms, I'd have done the same thing. And they said, we counted that as a win. That was the
there was another complaint
we got.
there was another complaint letter they got actually, which they did mention. It was from Nichelle going, "It's like, look, you've got so many other men on the ship. Shatner, really?"
Yeah, well, no, it had to be Shatner.
To be fair, Shatner was a sex symbol at the time.
I'm kidding.
There's something else talking about, you're saying Spock's devilish look. Another Uhura moment I always remember is, I think it's in Charlie X, where she's singing, and she sings about Spock having devil ears and devil eyes. And it's one of them where, we always talk about, somebody's seen this and picked up on it. And there is a spark of chemistry between Spock and Uhura in that. And you've got to think somebody who was...
Is that what
Kelvin films thought, actually, yeah, there is something there. Let's take that out of the box and play with that a little bit. And
Scotty's singing in the back going, "One day."
Yeah, Scotty's, if I just wait long enough, I'll be fine. Oh, another moment from the movies. Well, there's a couple of them. I love the bit in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I think it's only in the director's cut, where Kirk arrives on the bridge, and the crew are sort of looking at him like they're not familiar with him. And Uhura turns to the new crew and she says, "I know you don't know who he is, but I'll tell you, our chances of surviving this have just doubled."
Yeah.
It's just a great moment.
I think one of she isn't in Star Trek 3 much, but I love the part where she's in the little transporter.
I was going to mention that one.
And I think this ties into her with when she's threatening Sulu as well. And she just turns round to the young cadet in the closet.
Yeah.
And even before that, I love the way she's delivering the lines.
Yes, I know. This isn't reality.
Yeah, this is fancy.
This is fancy.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of it, she's just... I love the bit at the beginning of that scene where she's just doing it so, like, she's basically ignoring the guy. The guy's going, "You're not meant to be doing that." "No, I'm certainly not." "And you're certainly not meant to be doing that." No. And she's just getting on with what she's doing. It's like, well, this isn't reality. And then she flips on the dome and does that bit. And it's like, this is fantasy. Get in the closet.
Like how she's asked, "Are you going to be all right?" She goes, "Oh, I'll have Junior eating out of my hands. Don't worry."
Yeah.
It is a shame she doesn't go on the mission with them in that one, but I'm not sure why. Probably there wasn't enough dialogue to divvy up this with everybody. But yeah, she's great. And obviously some of the comedy moments in Star Trek 4 are fantastic with Uhura and Chekhov and the nuclear vessels and everything. All of that's brilliant.
And just something little like doing the reactions when she's doing the nuclear vessels. She's going, "Yeah, that's what I said in Almeida. Nuclear vessels," and she's got to be the straight man in that scene.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure I've mentioned it before that all that in San Francisco where they're doing that, they just put cameras on them. They're actually going up to people in the street in uniform and getting reactions.
It's
not like actors that are going, "Where's the nuclear vessels?" Just seeing what people say.
It's like that film. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. It's called Under the Skin, and it's Scarlett Johansson, and she's an alien.
Yeah.
And she sort of drives around in a van and tries to seduce men into the van.
So not like absorb them.
Kill them. Yeah. But they filmed that for real. So it's like, wait a minute. So you're telling me that in the middle of Glasgow, Scarlett Johansson drove around in a van and tried to pick up blokes outside nightclubs? Like, that's the best night ever.
Yeah.
Also, with that, you could sort of understand. Even though Scarlett Johansson, I don't know where she was in her career at the time, but you can kind of picture it's like she's out of context. You see it, you might think it's like, "Oh, she looks familiar, just can't place her." But you've got the guys, the crew from Star Trek in their uniforms on the streets of San Francisco, possibly at the height of their fame or one of the heights. And people are going past going, it's like, "Well, I don't know who they are." Like, they're in their uniforms and everything.
Yeah. Right.
Mind you, I'm guessing it's one of those things where they must have had a million ones where people did come up and go, it's like, "Hey, you're Star Trek guys."
It's probably one of those where it'd be really interesting to see the outtake reel of it.
Yes,
it definitely would. But maybe
Paramount Plus, are you listening?
Yeah,
and I want royalties for the idea this time.
Yeah, we'll take that.
Or if you're taking us to request, could you despecialize the effects from Star Trek? I've just found in the original series, it is distracting when the visuals suddenly, like when there's a special effect, it suddenly goes a lot. It just looks different to the rest of the episode.
I don't mind it at all, to be honest, but I would like the option.
I'd
nice.
like to
it's just like, there was a great bit with just going into Mirror Mirror. It's the bit where you go into the booth, the agonizer booth.
Yeah.
And it cuts to like to Chekhov in the booth. And suddenly, not only does the picture, they've kind of cleaned up the picture on him, I think, as well. And this effect looks absolutely wonderful. It's a really great effect they use. But it's like, I feel out of like where we were a minute ago. It's just very jarring.
Yeah, and it'd be nice if there was a happy medium that existed where they've cleaned up the picture, the film, and everything, but still left the old effects.
That's what I want.
There's got to be
clean it up
version before they put the new effects on.
Yeah, but that doesn't exist. It's you can either have the clean version with new effects or the mucky old version, which is
like I've said before, like Abil the models and the mucky old version. From a model building perspective, gives you a better view of what the Enterprise should look like.
Absolutely. I'm all for the kind of like, again, clean it up. I'm with you. Just make it look cleaner and crisper, and then it'll look consistent throughout. The one which I picked up on before was the, I think it was Amok Time, and they show Vulcan and the arena from the sky, and then you go to the planet, and it's clearly different. It's
very jarring.
Right out of it.
Some of them they've done something very similar, and it's very effective. Where they've taken the matte painting and they've added CGI to it to make it bigger and grander, but the core of the matte painting is still there, and that looks all right. But yeah, where they've completely replaced it with a CG landscape, it's weird. Just for the record, that Scarlett Johansson film was just after the Avengers, so I think there's a good chance people knew who she was.
So she was quite famous, but like you put her in a different outfit, maybe like I don't know what hair color she was having at the time.
Pretty much the same. She looks very similar.
Right.
Yeah, she did.
But I'm just saying, you could sort of give them a pass that she was a bit out of context. She wasn't in a uniform. She wasn't dressed as Black Widow.
No. Anyway, she wasn't dressed as much in that film, from what I recall. But
sorry, what was the name again? I'm just gonna.
It's called Under the Skin.
It's actually quite a good movie, really good movie. It's low budget sci-fi, and it's obviously one that she's done because she didn't need the money.
Oh yeah,
like the script or the story, and she's gone with it. And I like when actors are willing to do that. I like when big name actors are willing to go do a cheap production.
Like Guy Pearce going back to Neighbours for the finale.
Yeah.
There you go.
So good.
I didn't watch it.
I
loved all these people online going, wow, Guy Pearce really stole the show. It's like, of course he did. That's why he's not in Neighbours anymore.
You say this.
He's a good actor.
You say this. What I kind of loved about it was he went straight into soap opera acting, and it was so good for it. Because it's like, you know how good an actor he is, and he just went into this kind of like very soap opera style, kind of like cheesy acting, but it's a specific type of acting, which is really great and so enjoyable. Because it's like, I don't know, I'd forgotten how kind of cheesy soap acting can be, but they just still do it just exactly the same.
I've never been into soap operas apart from Santa Barbara. I used to watch. I was addicted to Santa Barbara, but Santa Barbara was on another level.
Just quickly before we go back on Star Trek, but it's like there was one scene as well in the Neighbours finale where apparently Holly Valance and Natalie Imbruglia happened to be available on the same day in the same city. Because this scene. And basically, someone on the street sends this thing to the WhatsApp group or whatever for Ramsey Street, and one of them goes like, "Oh, sorry, just a notification from my old street I used to live on." It's like, I just got that notification too. I also lived on Ramsey Street, 3725, and they just go and chat with each other.
And then they send a video message together.
and that video message is on a package of video messages, which is meant to have been sent, like, because he contacted all the old people who couldn't make it back for this historic moment when loads of houses are being sold up and stuff. and it's got them together. Like, they would have had to have taken that afternoon and then sent it straight to him. He would have had to have edited it in. You know, it's just ridiculous.
And the idea is they're sending video messages to someone's wedding. But then they obviously remembered that Natalie Imbruglia's character did not meet either of those characters.
No, they mention it.
So, yeah, well, that's what I mean. So she sort of said, well, I didn't know either of you, but I'm going to record this video as well. And you're like, oh, okay, fine. Anyway, that's Neighbours.
Literally, we just met last scene.
Yeah, that's Neighbours. Well, any other things? I mean, we could talk about Nichelle Nichols all day, but any other specific bits you want to call out, guys, before we wrap up?
There was another nice story George came out with this week, and he was talking about the funeral of his dad, and Nichelle was invited because she's a close friend of his, and she witnessed a lot of these Japanese Americans handing envelopes over to him. And she asked afterwards, like, what's going on? I don't understand. And he goes, oh, it's a Japanese tradition code then, where the guests help pay for the cost of a funeral.
That's amazing.
And all that. And she went, oh, and I didn't know. I'd never heard of that before. And the following day, received a check for $500 for her.
Right.
Towards helping towards the cost of the funeral.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you know, I never got the pleasure of meeting her at a con or anything, but it was like the fact that she seemed, everyone said how much she was there for fans and how, like, you know, when all those fan productions she appeared in as well, which were amazing. I just want to leave it on one just random moment. It just so happened because I was taking out a clip again for this week's radio show for David Warner. And I picked the dinner scene from Star Trek 6, which is just such a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And it just, I've recently been watching The Crown, and it just reminds me of every uncomfortable diplomatic meeting that Everman had. And basically, from the Klingons' perspective, they're sat across from Hitler. Like, that's how Kirk is seen in the Klingon Empire. He's the biggest war criminal going.
Yeah.
And there's such a tense moment. And when I was listening back to the clip, editing in, you get the bit where Nichelle just gets this lovely light moment in this very intense scene where she goes, oh, are you into Shakespeare? And you see this clown with just like worms coming out of his face and just, And it's just, again, it speaks to the fact that she was underwritten for, she didn't get enough scenes by far in any episode. But when she did appear, she just steal the scene with a little comedic moment or, you know, just, or a lovely bit of dialogue.
I don't think it's just the fact that she's a black woman. I think it's testament to her acting abilities.
Oh,
How much she's looked at as being one of the main characters of TOS.
Oh, completely.
As being a central character.
Yeah.
Because she was seriously underused. And even in the movies, she's underused.
Yeah.
And also, like, just to put a button on it, you know, to spend 2 years of your life on a show past when you were going to leave. And I'm sure she enjoyed it. I'm sure there was some lovely moments on set and everything, and in the films and everything else. But to essentially, in that moment, agree to sacrifice at least a year of your life, you know, the show's still going to go on for a cause, for not just you, for everyone else who's not been as fortunate as you in that moment, everyone else who's had the struggles you've had. And to do that is such a powerful symbol and something which, I think is amongst everything else worth remembering.
That's it. And I think, you know, we've talked about what a great actress she was and her contributions to Star Trek and everything like that. And the legacy there and everything.
She was also brought in by NASA as ambassador to promote getting women astronauts.
Well, that ties in exactly to what I was going to say, that I think her greatest legacy is something that she talked about a lot at conventions. Is she would talk about the number of people who came up to her and said, you know, I've become an actress, I've become a scientist, I've become an astronaut because of you, because of your character. Yeah. And, you know, that's just incredible for anyone to achieve. And she will never be forgotten for that or for anything else that she did. So I think yeah, I think we'll leave it there because, you know, as we said,
we glass to the best wager.
Indeed. We don't have anything we can add to it, but we wanted to talk about it. You know, it's a huge loss to the Star Trek universe, and I think in a lot of ways George Takei's become sort of like the patriarch of the Star Trek universe, and if that's the case, then Nichelle Nichols was certainly the matriarch of it.
Yeah.
So
Oh God, yes.
We have lost the
lead. Will Kate now be the matriarch?
I would imagine so, yeah. But yeah, so
Kate says that she was inspired to take up acting.
Exactly.
By Nichelle.
You know, go watch pull out some original series episodes and enjoy Nichelle Nichols' performance, and we'll be back next week.
The original movies.
Yeah. Fingers crossed we'll be talking about Way of the Warrior. So
hopefully Way of the Warrior for real next week.
Yeah, I mean the amount of hate mail we're getting from the Klingon Empire over this. There's a diplomatic incident, I'm telling you.
But yeah, I won't do our usual plugs and everything, so it's not that kind of episode. But yeah, thanks for trekking with us this time. We'll see you next time on the Retrack.
And in frequency closer.